The first sign that something was wrong came in the dead of night. It wasn't an explosion or a flash of lightning. It was the stars, specifically the absence of them. For centuries, humanity had relied on the stars as constant companions in the night sky. They were symbols of navigation, of wonder, of continuity. But tonight, they were gone. At first, no one noticed. People were too wrapped up in their lives, too absorbed in their routines. The world had grown used to the mysteries of the cosmos, and the stars were just there. But then, by dawn, something eerie began to happen. The constellations that once glimmered in the heavens were missing, faded as if the sky had been wiped clean with a cosmic eraser. The Milky Way itself, the once vibrant trail of stars cutting through the night, had disappeared. Across the world, people began to talk. Astronomers, confused, scrambled for answers. They claimed it was some kind of cosmic anomaly, a massive dust cloud, or a galactic disturbance. But no one really believed them. The sky had never looked like this before, and then came the ships. At first, they appeared on the horizon, great, towering forms that seemed to shimmer and distort the very air around them. They didn't resemble anything human-made, not even close. These weren't spaceships as anyone had ever imagined them, sleek, metallic constructs designed for speed and power. No, these were vast. Their shapes weren't defined, shifting like liquid metal, unfathomable to human eyes. It was as though they didn't adhere to any logic or geometry known to man. They didn't make a sound as they descended. They didn't need to. The first to land were the smallest, massive, but small compared to the larger ships that soon followed. Their size alone would have dwarfed the tallest skyscrapers in every city across the globe. The sheer scale of these vessels was mind-boggling, and as they touched down in remote, desolate locations, people began to panic. Governments scrambled for answers. The world's military powers mobilized, ready to respond to what they assumed was an alien invasion. But the ships weren't hostile, at least, not in any way they could comprehend. They didn't fire weapons or announce their presence with a grandiose show of force. Instead, they hovered silently over Earth's landscape, occupying entire continents as though marking territory. The moment they landed, the broadcast stopped. Televisions blinked off, radios fell silent, and the internet, normally a constant pulse of human communication, was swallowed by a void of incomprehensible static. Humanity's only connection to the outside world was the ships in the sky, and their inhabitants, who had yet to reveal themselves. It wasn't long before they did. The first beings to emerge were towering, slim creatures, humanoid but with features so alien that they defied any human comparison. Their skin was almost translucent, a gleaming white that shimmered as if they were made of light itself. They walked with a slow, deliberate grace, their bodies moving as though every step was calculated, measured for effect. Their eyes, large and black, gleamed with a strange intelligence, a chilling, calculating presence that made the air feel heavy with anticipation. Their leader, the one who emerged first, was unlike any creature humans had ever seen. It was taller than the rest, its movements precise, regal. It spoke in a language that no human ear could decipher, a rhythmic cadence of strange tones that seemed to vibrate through the air itself. Yet, as its voice echoed, the meaning was clear. There was no need for translation. "We are the Eldrin." The voice resonated in every human's mind, as though the words had been placed directly into their consciousness. You are to be judged. And with that simple, chilling declaration, everything changed. The moment the message was transmitted, the world was plunged into chaos. Governments issued emergency broadcasts, but no one could explain what had happened. Humanity's greatest minds tried to comprehend the situation, but all the answers they sought seemed futile against the overwhelming force now on Earth. The Eldrin ships, each one colossal, each one unlike anything mankind could have ever conceived, hovered above cities, above entire nations. They were everywhere. It felt as though the very sky had turned against Earth, that something greater than any war or weapon had arrived to judge humanity. It was as if the universe itself had sent its representatives to decide whether humans deserved to exist. Panic spread like wildfire across the globe. Nations fell into disarray. The first attacks came not from the Eldrin, but from human desperation. The military, unprepared and ill-equipped to deal with an enemy that was both physically imposing and mentally superior, struck first. Cities on the outskirts of military bases were the first to feel the brunt of airstrikes, hoping to deter the invaders before they could strike. But the Eldrin didn't fight back in the way humanity expected. Instead, they merely waited. In the early hours of the arrival, a strange silence fell over the world. It wasn't the kind of peace that followed a storm. It was an unsettling, suffocating stillness, like the calm before something much more dangerous. Then came the message, a broadcast transmitted across every form of communication, TV, radio, and even the internet that had briefly returned. The Eldrin spoke again, their voice reverberating through every home, every screen, every mind. Your trial has begun. The meaning of those words was unclear, but the implication was unmistakable. Humanity was no longer the dominant species on Earth. The Eldrin were here, and they would decide whether humanity had a place in the galaxy. It was the beginning of an age of uncertainty, a time when human beings realized just how fragile their existence had been and how much they had to lose. The very survival of the human race now hung in the balance. The Eldrin had come, and humanity would have to fight, adapt, and endure like never before if they were to have any hope of passing the trial. The question was, would they succeed, or would they be wiped from the stars forever? The world trembled in the shadow of the Eldrin ships, their silent, unyielding presence creating an atmosphere of suffocating tension. As days turned into weeks, humanity watched as the Eldrin set about their strange and methodical preparations. It wasn't clear what their purpose was at first, but their actions were deliberate. Cities were occupied. The world's militaries, once confident in their might, found themselves outclassed and helpless. Weapons were useless against the Eldrin ships, which seemed impervious to every form of attack. The Eldrin didn't immediately take action against humanity. They simply observed, studying the human race as though we were a curious, primitive species. They began making broadcasts, each more cryptic than the last. The meaning of their words was clear enough, but their tone was cold, detached, as if humanity was nothing more than a passing interest to them. They were not here to annihilate the human race, but to judge it. It was in these first few weeks that the trial was revealed. The Eldrin made it known that every human, regardless of status, nationality, or background, would be judged individually. The trial was a test of human worth, a process that would decide humanity's fate. The Eldrin would choose the strongest, the wisest, and the most capable to join them in the stars. The rest would be erased. The first humans to be judged were brought before the Eldrin under a strange, almost serene compulsion. Some resisted, but it didn't matter. The Eldrin simply gathered them, as if they were cattle, and led them away in silence. Those who passed the trial were never seen again, their names forgotten. The others, the ones who failed, disappeared into the ether, their lives snuffed out in an instant, as if they had never existed at all. The world watched in horror as this cruel process unfolded, and the terror spread like wildfire. News stations broadcast the images of the chosen, humans walking away with the Eldrin, their faces blank and expressionless, as though they had already accepted their fate. No one knew what awaited those who passed the trial, but there were whispers. Some said they were given a place among the stars, brought into the fold of an ancient alien empire. Others feared that the Eldrin had a darker purpose, that those chosen were subjected to an eternity of servitude or worse. Desperation soon set in, and humanity began to fragment. Governments, unable to maintain control, dissolved into chaos. People fled from cities, seeking refuge in the wilderness, in remote corners of the earth where the Eldrin's influence was weaker. But the ships remained in the sky, ever watchful, and the trial continued. Captain Sarah Reyes, once a decorated military officer, found herself in the heart of this unraveling world. Having witnessed the disintegration of order, she found herself in a different kind of battle, one where survival was no longer guaranteed by weapons or strategy alone, but by something deeper. She had been on the front lines of the first failed resistance efforts. She had seen cities burn, seen brave men and women vanish into the darkness without a trace. But she also saw something else, a spark. A spark in the eyes of the survivors. Something that wasn't in the Eldrin's calculations. She wasn't the only one who saw it. Across the globe, people began to talk. In every corner of the earth, whispers spread of a growing resistance. They weren't sure what they were resisting exactly. There was no central figurehead, no military structure to organize them, but they shared a common belief. The Eldrin might have come to judge humanity, but humanity wasn't about to go down without a fight. But it wasn't just the resistance fighters who were watching. The Eldrin were too. They studied the human defiance, observing the rise of these rebel groups with cold, calculating precision. They'd expected fear. They'd expected submission. But what they found was far more dangerous: humanity's refusal to accept its fate. In the days that followed, Reyes and her ragtag band of survivors made their way to a remote outpost on the edge of what was once a thriving metropolis. The world had grown smaller in these new times. Travel was no longer easy or safe, and many roads were blocked or abandoned. But Reyes knew that somewhere, hidden beneath the ruins of the old world, there might be something that could turn the tide. It was during a daring reconnaissance mission into what used to be Washington, D.C., that Reyes uncovered a crucial piece of information, an ancient artifact, long forgotten by most, and hidden deep within a subterranean vault beneath the city. A group of eccentric scholars had discovered it years ago, but no one had understood its significance. Now, Reyes would have to rely on her instincts and the strength of the human spirit to unlock its true potential. As she entered the vault, the air was thick with dust and the weight of history. The artifact was small, barely noticeable at first glance, but as she touched it, something resonated inside her. A pulse. A flash of light. For a moment, Reyes couldn't tell if it was just her imagination or if the artifact had truly come to life. But she knew one thing: this was no ordinary object. It hummed with energy, ancient and powerful. It was clear now that the Eldrin hadn't just come to judge humanity. They were here to harvest something far greater, something they feared. It was the key to humanity's survival. Reyes couldn't shake the feeling that the trial wasn't about mere survival or strength. The Eldrin hadn't come to kill. They had come to test the essence of humanity itself. What made humans different? What was it that made them capable of defying odds, of surviving against impossible odds? It wasn't their intelligence, or their technology, or even their sheer will to survive. It was something deeper, something older, something the Eldrin had overlooked. And with that, the spark of rebellion flared into a flame. Reyes didn't know how she would stop the Eldrin, but she now understood one thing: humanity had a hidden potential, a power that the Eldrin couldn't possibly understand. A power that, if awakened, could change the course of the trial. The question now was, how could she awaken it in time? The artifact was warm in Sarah Reyes's palm. Not in a dangerous, radioactive way, but in the way something alive might be. It pulsed rhythmically, like a second heartbeat, syncing with her own. She stood alone in the ruins of the subterranean vault, its steel and stone walls scorched from centuries of neglect, dust swirling in the dim light cast by the artifact's soft amber glow. Outside, the world was crumbling. Eldrin patrol drones floated silently above the horizon, casting massive shadows over the broken skeletons of cities. The trial continued. Every day, more people vanished, either taken by the Eldrin or reduced to little more than echoes in the dust. But here, in the vault, Reyes had touched something ancient, something human, not made by the Eldrin, not alien, but still far older than any Earth record suggested. She slipped the artifact into a reinforced pouch and made her way out, boots crunching over shattered tiles. Her team was waiting in the rubble above. Malik, her second in command, tall and quiet with eyes like steel. Anna, the former systems analyst turned rebel tech whiz, and Beck, an ex-marine with a missing leg and a laugh like rolling thunder. All of them hardened by loss, but unbroken. "You found it," Malik said when Reyes emerged. "I did," she replied. "And it's not just a weapon. It's something more. I think it's a message. Maybe even a memory." Anna's eyes lit up. "You mean like a record? Data?" "Not exactly," Reyes said. "More like a feeling. I can't explain it. But when I touched it, I saw something." Beck frowned. "Saw what?" "A face. Human. Ancient. Not just memory. Purpose. Like someone left this for us. To remind us who we are." They stood in silence for a moment, absorbing the weight of that possibility. Then Reyes added, "We're not the first to face extinction, but we might be the first to fight back." That night, beneath the collapsed dome of an abandoned observatory, Reyes activated the artifact again. This time, the pulsing light expanded, forming a holographic lattice in the air, symbols, spirals, lines of shifting geometry that no one could quite decipher, yet somehow felt familiar. The team stared, transfixed. Suddenly, a voice echoed from the lattice. "If you hear this, you are still human." The voice was male, calm, measured, but laced with urgency. Ancient, but unmistakably earthborn. Anna immediately started scanning the waveform with a jury-rigged audio analyzer, but the tech flickered and failed. "We faced them before. We built this with the last of our kind. You must remember who you are, not with weapons, not with fear, but with fire. They cannot comprehend it. That is your strength." The message ended, leaving a silence as thick as concrete. "Fire," Beck said, confused. "What fire?" "Not literal," Reyes murmured. "He meant the human spirit. Our defiance, creativity, rage, love. The chaos they fear most." Malik leaned forward. "So the Eldrin have done this before? To other species?" "Looks like it," Reyes said. "But we might be the first to figure out their blind spot." They weren't just being judged. They were being tested for a quality the Eldrin couldn't measure. A force beyond science and structure. Something wild. Something human. In the days that followed, Reyes's team became something more than survivors. They became messengers, carriers of the spark. They moved from outpost to outpost, evading Eldrin detection, sharing the artifact's message with every group of rebels and refugees they could find. And something extraordinary began to happen. Hope spread. It wasn't like the firebombs or plasma charges that once defined resistance. It was subtler, but more powerful. People stopped running, stopped hiding. They started building, creating, organizing not just to survive, but to endure, to tell stories, to share music, to paint murals on broken walls. The very things the Eldrin couldn't predict or understand began to fill the world again. The trial was still ongoing. People still vanished. But now, the Eldrin hesitated. They didn't expect a cultural resistance. They didn't expect poetry scrawled in ash, or symphonies played on salvaged instruments, or children laughing among ruins. And most of all, they didn't expect unity. One night, a storm brewed over the city of Santiago, where Reyes had traveled to meet with another rebel cell. The clouds roiled unnaturally, stirred, perhaps, by the presence of the Eldrin mothership that now hung motionless above the Andes like a second moon. As Reyes prepared to speak to the local leaders, something shifted. The artifact pulsed brighter than ever before. Then the voice returned, clearer now, fuller, and with it, images. Thousands of years ago, humans standing on alien soil. Eldrin soldiers watching as civilizations burned. But instead of submission, the humans fought back, not with force, but with resilience. And in the final image, a single human standing alone before a council of Eldrin, refusing to kneel. Then, darkness. The artifact shut down, but the meaning was crystal clear. This wasn't humanity's first trial, but it might be the last. And perhaps, just perhaps, the Eldrin had miscalculated again. They had expected a species that fought to survive, but they had found one that would die to be free. The skies above Earth changed the moment the artifact broadcast its final message. Somewhere within the vast mothership that loomed over the Andes, the Eldrin stirred. From orbit, the ship looked like a cold silver bloom, petal-shaped spires radiating out from a dark, humming core. But deep inside, where no human had ever set foot, the Eldrin watched and debated. They had no faces, no mouths. They communicated through pulses of light, thoughts shared on networks so ancient and refined they made Earth's most advanced systems seem like scribbles in the dirt. And what they were discussing now, the resurgence of the human spark, concerned them deeply. The threshold is nearing. They should not have advanced this far. Correction. We underestimated their adaptive irrationality. They do not obey entropy. They dance with it. Back on Earth, Sarah Reyes stood atop a collapsed skyscraper in what remained of Quito. The resistance base beneath the rubble was one of their most secure, an old nuclear shelter retrofitted with salvage tech and reinforced with Earth steel, a dense alloy mined before the Eldrin's arrival. Beside her stood Malik, his eyes locked on the dark line of the Eldrin mothership. "They're quiet," he muttered. "Too quiet. They're watching," Reyes replied. "But they're not sure anymore." Malik tilted his head. "You think we scared them?" "No," Reyes said. "But we confused them. And that might be even better." Inside the resistance base, Anna was scanning the artifact again, trying to coax out any remaining data. It hadn't activated since the final vision, but it still pulsed faintly. A heartbeat in her hands. Reyes joined her, laying a hand on her shoulder. "Any luck?" Anna shook her head. "It's like it's waiting for something. Maybe another signal. Maybe. A moment. A moment." Anna nodded. "Yeah, like it knows there's still something left to do. Something bigger." Beck burst in, out of breath. "We've got something. A message." Reyes turned. "From who?" Beck's face was pale. "Not from who. From them." The Eldrin had never directly spoken to humanity. Their judgments were silent, their intentions unknowable. Until now, the message came as a beam of light through the clouds. It formed a pillar in the center of the city ruins, visible from miles around. Reyes and her team climbed to the top of a nearby tower to get a clear view, while cameras hidden in the rebel network captured the phenomenon from every angle. Then, the sky spoke. A voice echoed, deep and mechanical, yet disturbingly human. "Humanity has reached the divergence. Those who pass shall be elevated. Those who resist shall be erased. One among you shall speak. A representative, chosen not by rank, but by resonance." All eyes turned to Reyes. The artifact, silent for days, blazed to life. That night, in the base's inner chamber, Reyes stared at the glowing object in her hands as it vibrated gently. Not with danger, but with recognition. "What does it mean?" Malik asked. Anna was the one to answer. "It means they've acknowledged her. The Eldrin want to talk. Directly." Beck snorted. "Diplomacy? From cosmic overlords? I don't buy it." "They don't negotiate," Anna said. "But they do assess. And right now, Sarah's the most dangerous anomaly in their models." Reyes exhaled slowly. "Because I represent the thing they don't understand." "Which is?" Malik asked. "Hope," she said simply. The next morning, the Eldrin sent a retrieval craft, a shimmering prism of light and antimatter that descended silently into the center of Quito's ruins. Reyes stepped into it alone, armed with nothing but the artifact and the memory of what it had shown her. The ship didn't have corridors or seats. It folded around her, gently, like a fluid envelope of energy and thought. Time bent. Gravity reversed. And then she stood before them, the Eldrin Council, 12 towering beings of radiant energy, humanoid in shape, but utterly alien in presence. They had no expressions, no visible features, only shifting patterns of light and sound. "You are the spark bearer." Reyes met their alien gaze without flinching. "I'm human. You have touched the legacy matrix. You have seen what came before." She nodded. I saw what you did to them. To the last ones who stood where I stand, they were deemed unworthy. As you will be, if you persist. Reyes stepped forward, the artifact pulsing at her hip. You think this is about worth? You're wrong. This isn't a test of intellect or strength. You're testing for something you can't measure. Elaborate. Humanity doesn't survive because we're strong. We survive because we refuse to die on our knees. We create when there's nothing left. We love when there's only pain. And when the world ends, we write poems about the ashes. That's what you don't get. The Eldrin pulsed in silent contemplation. You speak of chaos. I speak of freedom. Of the soul. You don't have one, do you? Silence. Then, if humanity wishes to ascend, a final phase is required. Reyes's blood ran cold. Final phase, trial of flame. You will return. The test begins in 7 Earth days. And just like that, the Eldrin vanished. Reyes awoke back in the ruins, the artifact still glowing. The countdown had begun. The wind howled across the Andes, scraping through the ruins of Quito like the whispers of ghosts. But Sarah Reyes didn't hear it. Not really. Not with the Eldrin's words still echoing in her mind. Trial of flame. 7 Earth days. She stood on the edge of a shattered balcony overlooking the resistance camp, the artifact pulsing against her chest like a second heart. Malik joined her, boots crunching gravel, his expression unreadable. They give you a week. That's new, he said. They've never spoken to anyone before, Reyes replied. Yeah, but they've also never given a warning. A chance. Reyes glanced at him. You think it's a chance? I think, Malik said slowly. They're trying to understand the thing they've always feared. In the Resistance War room, a former server hall rebuilt into a multi-level command center, Reyes gathered her team. Maps flickered in the air, outlines of destroyed cities, survivor camps, and known Eldrin patrols. Anna adjusted a projection with a swipe. This trial of flame. We've seen glimpses of it before, she said. Cities that were wiped out in synchronized bursts. Patterns. Zones marked with something different. Radiation signatures unlike their usual energy weapons. We thought it was testing. Maybe it was more. Beck leaned against a console. So what is it? A superweapon? No, Reyes said. It's a crucible. They all turned to her. They're going to burn us. Not just with fire. With fear, with chaos, with tests meant to break the very things that make us human. And we have to survive it, not just with weapons, but with who we are. Okay, Beck grunted. But surviving who we are doesn't hold up against a 5-kilometer plasma lance. Anna stepped in. We don't win by force. We win by being unquantifiable. Beck groaned. We're fighting a galactic AI empire with interpretive dance? Anna smirked. If it works. The next day, Reyes took a team north to the high desert ruins of Bogota. There, the last known enclave of artists, thinkers, and rogue AIs had been rebuilding something strange. Not a weapon, a theater. The man who greeted her was barefoot, wild-haired, wearing a cloak made of old parachute silk. He introduced himself as Ludo. We expected you, he said, bowing with an exaggerated flourish. Reyes frowned. You knew I was coming? We all knew someone was coming. The air trembled. The fire moved. Behind him, the walls were covered in art, charcoal murals of the trial, of burning cities, of figures standing against waves of light. And all of them featured Reyes's face. What are you building here? A ritual, Ludo said. A story the Eldrin can't model. That night, they performed it. Hundreds gathered among the ruins under the stars. There were no weapons, just fire pits, music cobbled from salvaged instruments, dance, poetry. Anna recorded everything, broadcasting it across the Resistance network. It wasn't defiance through power. It was defiance through meaning. Reyes stood at the center, holding the artifact. As the performance ended, it flared bright gold and let out a pulse of sound, like a bell tolling across the world. And the stars blinked. On day 3, the Eldrin responded. Across the globe, they ignited 10 trial zones. Cities bathed in white light, surrounded by humming barriers. Not destructive. Not yet. But warning flares. Isolated arenas. And in the center of each, a structure formed, tall, obsidian, humming. "We've seen those before," Beck said, pointing to satellite feeds. "They're like testing towers. Last time one showed up, Sao Paulo went silent." "They're baiting us," Malik said. "Or measuring us. They want to see what we do," Reyes replied. "Then we give them something to choke on," Anna muttered. Reyes made her decision. Each tower would be visited, not attacked, but challenged. She divided the resistance into 10 groups, each with artists, scientists, soldiers, children, elders. A cross-section of humanity. "We don't fight this war with just fists," she told them before departure. "We fight with fire. The kind inside us." Her team's destination was Cairo. Cairo was silent when they arrived. The city was dust and wind, sandblasted monuments half buried. In the center of the old Tahrir Square, the Eldrin Tower shimmered. It was alien and elegant, a vertical monolith of unknowable technology. And yet, at its base was an opening. A door. Reyes stepped forward. Inside, she found mirrors, dozens of them. Hundreds. Some were real, cracked and human-made. Others were shimmering panels that reflected not her body, but her memories, her childhood, her failures, the people she'd lost. It was psychological warfare. The Eldrin were trying to break her without touching her. Voices echoed from the walls. "You failed your brother. You let your squad die. You cannot win. There is no victory, only delay." Reyes trembled, but then she laughed. It wasn't theatrical. It was real. A harsh, beautiful bark of disbelief. "You think I don't know?" she said aloud. "You think I haven't carried those ghosts every day?" She stepped deeper into the maze. "We don't win despite our pain. We win because of it." As she reached the center of the tower, the mirrors collapsed. Not shattered, dissolved. And in their place stood a human-sized shape made of light. It wasn't Eldrin. It was the holographic echo of the man from the artifact, the ancient human who had left the first message. He said only one thing: "One spark can set the stars on fire." Then he vanished, and Reyes knew they were winning. By day 6, 3 other towers had been breached by other resistance teams. In Paris, a child solved an unsolvable Eldrin logic maze by scribbling outside the lines. In Manila, dancers surrounded the tower in a living fractal pattern that no algorithm could predict. In Johannesburg, a blind storyteller recited humanity's oldest myths, and the tower wept liquid light. Each act wasn't a test of strength, but of unpredictability, of soul. The Eldrin were seeing it, the spark, the flame. On the 7th day, the skies opened. The mothership descended. It didn't fire. It didn't destroy. It spoke. Across every channel, every device, even through human thought, the voice thundered. "You are not efficient. You are not logical. You are not obedient. You are something else." And then you pass. All over Earth, the trial zones dissolved. The towers retracted into light. The barriers vanished. The Eldrin mothership, without ceremony or explosion, folded into itself and disappeared, vanishing into the fabric of space-time as though it had never existed. And the artifact, still warm in Reyes's hand, turned to ash. She let it fall, and for the first time in decades, she felt peace. A week later, atop the ruins of the old UN building in New York, Reyes gave the speech that would echo for centuries. They called it a trial. They tried to measure us, judge us, quantify us. But what they didn't understand, what they couldn't understand, was this: we are not numbers. We are not code. We are fire. And fire doesn't obey. The skies were quiet. No motherships, no humming towers of judgment, no trials looming over the horizon. For the first time in living memory, Earth was truly silent. But peace, Reyes quickly learned, was not the same as healing. The Eldrin had left, vanished with impossible grace. But their departure had left a vacuum, a space filled with uncertainty, trauma, and the question that clawed at every survivor's mind. Why did they leave? Reyes sat in the ruins of Geneva, now the de facto capital of Earth's fractured nations. Once a melting pot of diplomacy, it now served as the birthplace of something new. The Interworld Council, a coalition of surviving leaders, rebel commanders, and citizen thinkers, was forming here, painfully, slowly, but with purpose. For the first time, humanity wasn't united by fear or force. It was united by choice. Malik leaned on the rusted railing beside her, watching the teams unload supplies from old hover trucks. You know they want you to lead it, right? Reyes didn't answer. You're the firebrand, Sarah. The spark bearer. You stared the Eldrin in the face and made them leave. Who else has that kind of weight? I don't want the weight, she muttered. Malik tilted his head. That's why they trust you with it. She looked out over the rebuilding city. The bones of skyscrapers were rising again. Engineers, artists, children, all working side by side, patching the shattered heart of the planet. They left us a gift, you know, she said quietly. Malik blinked. The Eldrin, she nodded. They didn't just vanish. They gave us room. The trial was a way of saying, prove you're more than what we calculated. And when we did, they stepped aside. Because they couldn't control us, Malik said. No, Reyes said. Because they couldn't understand us. And maybe that scared them. Elsewhere, on the outskirts of Nairobi, Anna stood among rows of strange alien monoliths. Unlike the trial towers, these were smaller, dormant, left behind like breadcrumbs. The team had dubbed them silent stones. Some buzzed faintly when touched. Others shifted in color depending on the thoughts of the person nearby. Most didn't react at all. They're seeds, Anna said during a live stream to the council. I think they were left for us to learn. The Eldrin didn't just test us. They wanted to teach us. Or maybe see what we'd do with their tools once they were gone. Beck's voice came through the transmission. Or it's a trap. A galactic science fair where we're the ants. But Anna didn't agree. She'd spent her life studying alien tech. And these monoliths didn't feel like traps. They felt like puzzles. Meanwhile, the world's survivors were changing. In Paris, street musicians who once played in bombed-out subway tunnels now filled plazas with improvised symphonies. In Shanghai, children were being taught Eldrin math alongside ancient human poetry. In Lagos, farmers cultivated crops infused with low-frequency Eldrin radiation, enhanced yields, faster growth, and a mystery no one could yet explain. It was as if humanity had unlocked a new layer of reality. But with it came visions. People began dreaming of places they had never seen, of machines orbiting dead suns, of voices echoing in languages that felt human, yet weren't. Some called it resonance. Others feared it was something darker. Reyes began to feel it too. One night, she stood on the roof of the old Geneva Command Tower and closed her eyes. The wind shifted, and suddenly she wasn't alone, not physically, but in her mind. It was like being on the edge of a vast ocean. A presence, vast and ancient, brushing against her thoughts. Not hostile, but curious. She staggered back, gasping. Anna, called from Nairobi, confirmed others were experiencing the same. The artifact may have disintegrated, but its imprint remained. In Reyes, and perhaps others like her. The Eldrin didn't just test us, Anna said over a secure feed. They may have marked us. Or opened a doorway. Reyes didn't answer. She already knew. The Interworld Council convened in full on the 40th day after the trial. Dozens of nations, some old, others born in the wake of the collapse, sent delegates. Most arrived via jury-rigged transports, some by foot. A few connected virtually from orbiting stations rebuilt from Eldrin wreckage. Reyes sat at the head of the gathering, not by choice, but by expectation. This isn't about rebuilding what we lost, she said, her voice echoing through the hall. It's about becoming something new. The Eldrin didn't destroy humanity. They forced us to see it. See what? Asked a delegate from the Pacific Coalition. That we were never meant to survive by obedience, Reyes replied. We were meant to evolve through defiance. There was silence. Then a slow clap from the Martian envoy, a bearded, dust-streaked engineer who had jury-rigged his transmission through a weather satellite. Then let's get to it. 2 weeks later, a signal arrived. Not from the Eldrin, from deep space. A pattern of pulses recognizable only because of Reyes's residual resonance with the artifact. Anna decrypted it with a new hybrid system, Eldrin interface patched with old Terran AI cores. The message was short. We saw your fire. We're coming. Malik stared at the decoded pulses. Friends, Reyes didn't answer, because in the deepest part of her soul, she knew. They weren't Eldrin, and they weren't human. They were something else, something older, something that had watched the Eldrin, just as the Eldrin had once watched Earth. And now that the trial was over, now that humanity had declared its flame to the universe, they were not alone. Far above Earth, hidden behind the curve of Saturn's rings, an object stirred. It was alive, metal and thought fused, a remnant of a war long forgotten. Its sensors blinked. It had heard the trial. It had seen the spark, and it whispered across the stars. The humans have awakened. Prepare the crucible. The cold beyond Saturn had always been quiet, too far for Earth's cluttered satellites, too dark for solar winds to sing. But now it pulsed. The object hidden behind the rings unfurled like a flower of metal and thought. Petals of radiant alloy extended, revealing a spherical core that beat with slow, deliberate rhythm. Inside, something ancient awoke. It had no eyes, but it saw. It had no mouth, but it spoke. And across the stars, its message reverberated. Crucible sequence, initialized. On Earth, Reyes stood in the old hangar that once served as Geneva's weapons depot, now converted into the Hearth Assembly, the heart of humanity's new frontier command. The air shimmered with heat and hope. Technicians rushed between consoles. Reclaimed Eldrin interface panels flickered with human-coded languages. Children and scientists worked side by side, equal parts engineering and improvisation. Anna's voice came in over the speaker. "You're going to want to see this." Reyes leaned forward. "Another signal?" "No," Anna said. "A thing." Something moved in the outer system, beyond Saturn. And it wasn't Eldrin tech. A hologram snapped into place, grainy, distant, and impossibly massive. An obsidian sphere with tendrils like solar flares, drifting into motion. Malik swore softly behind her. "How long has it been there?" Reyes asked. "We don't know," Anna replied. "Could have been a dormant relic. Could have arrived yesterday." But the moment the trial ended, it began. Waking up, Reyes stared at the display. "And the message?" Anna's voice lowered. "Crucible." 3 days later, Reyes arrived at Luna Base 1. The moon station had been abandoned during the Eldrin takeover, but human scavenger crews had returned quickly, desperate for any vantage point on Earth's changing space. From here, with makeshift telescopes and quantum uplinks, they watched the Crucible come alive. It wasn't just a machine. It was a beacon. Dozens of signal bursts now radiated from it in all directions. Some were simple pulses, mathematical, unmistakably artificial. Others were stranger. They felt like music, like coded memory, like entire lifetimes compressed into light. And then it responded to Earth. The Crucible's core glowed for the first time in millennia. Its consciousness, an ancient Gestalt mind built from the remnants of a dead race, flashed with recognition. Humanity's signal, fractured and defiant, had reached it. It studied the languages, the rebellions, the pain encoded in the trial of flame. It understood the message for what it was, not a cry for help, but a challenge. Back on Earth, debates raged inside the Interworld Council. "Another test?" the Pacific Coalition asked. "A trap," Beck from Mars said grimly. "We don't know," Anna insisted. "It isn't Eldrin. It's older. Maybe older than the Eldrin themselves." "Then why now?" Reyes asked. "Because we lit a fire," Anna said. "The Eldrin weren't the only ones watching. And whatever this is, this crucible, it saw the blaze." Silence fell. Then Reyes spoke the words no one wanted to say. "We have to go to it." The ship was called the Ember, cobbled together from surviving Eldrin skimmers and Terran jump course. Its hull was scorched from the trial, its interior lined with human graffiti and alien tech welded together by instinct and defiance. Reyes chose a small crew: Malik, Anna, Beck, and 2 others. Toma, a linguist raised in the post-trial ruins of Jakarta, and Juno, a biomech pilot from one of Earth's last underground resistance cells. Each carried scars. Each carried fire. The Ember launched from Luna Base to an audience of millions. It cut through the blackness with eerie silence, a candle flickering toward the unknown. Inside, the mood was tense. Juno sat in the cockpit, fingers brushing haptic controls. We're picking up resonance fields from the crucible already. It's like flying into a chorus. Any patterns? Reyes asked. Toma nodded from the comm station. They're forming linguistic lattices, not just communication stories. It's broadcasting entire histories to us. Beck frowned. Histories of what? Anna's voice trembled. Wars. As they approached Saturn, the crucible loomed into view. It was far larger than any Eldrin craft. A kilometer-wide sphere, wrapped in orbiting plates of unknown material. Its surface glistened like molten glass, and its core pulsed like a slow heartbeat. Then it spoke, not in sound, in memory. Each member of the Ember crew saw something different. Malik stood on a battlefield of stars, surrounded by giants forged from light and sorrow. Juno found herself inside a machine city, witnessing the last breath of a civilization consumed by its own creations. Toma saw a library built on the bones of dying worlds. In Reyes, she saw Earth, but not her Earth. An Earth hundreds of thousands of years from now, split between flame and metal, its skies torn by conflicts with entities she couldn't name. Then, silence. The crucible's surface opened. A single corridor of shimmering black light unfurled toward them. Beck shook his head. I've seen this before. Eldrin used it when they wanted to invite someone. Doesn't feel the same, Malik said. No, Anna murmured. This is older. It's not a trap. It's a choice. Reyes tightened her gloves. Suit up. Inside the crucible, there was no up or down. The walls were obsidian mirrors that reflected more than appearances. They reflected memory. As the crew walked, echoes of their pasts flickered across the surfaces. Childhood laughter, moments of fear, the instant before a weapon is fired. Then, the corridor ended, and the voice came, not spoken, but felt. You have passed the trial of flame. You have emerged with defiance. Now face the crucible. Reyes stepped forward. Who are you? The crucible responded with a projection, thousands of shimmering forms in constant flux. Not one species, but many. Not one voice, but a choir. We are what remains of those who defied extinction. This vessel is our monument, and our test. Test of what? Juno asked. Of inheritance. The projection shifted, showing galaxies in collapse, ancient empires dissolving into dust, Eldrin fleets clashing with unknown horrors beyond darkened stars. Then it showed Earth, humanity, a flame still burning, small, but uncontained. We watched the Eldrin test your kind. Expected your extinguishment, but you resisted. You adapted. You broke their pattern. Now, we offer a forge. Anna stepped forward, her voice shaking. What does that mean? The trial was a crucible of fire. This is a crucible of choice. Images filled the air, technologies beyond comprehension, weapons that could bend space, machines that could shape ecosystems, constructs of light and memory. We give you the means to ascend, to leave your world and stand among the stars not as prey, but as power. Beck narrowed his eyes. And the catch? The crucible darkened. You will not be the only flame rising. Others have seen what you did. Others will come. Some to ally. Some to conquer. A final image. A fleet unlike anything ever seen. Vessels shaped like screams. Engines that burn time itself. The galaxy stirs. You are no longer alone. Back on the Ember, Reyes sat alone in her quarters. A gift. A warning. A challenge. The crucible would remain in orbit for now. It offered blueprints, archives, potential. But Earth would have to choose what to do with it. Not just survive, not just rebuild, but become something worthy of the stars. Malik knocked on the doorframe. Thinking heavy thoughts? Reyes smiled faintly. More like lighting heavy fires. He held up a data slab. Anna finished decrypting the full crucible archives. Guess what it calls us? Reyes arched an eyebrow. Malik grinned. Flameborn. The word spread across Earth like wildfire. Flameborn, not a name given by the Eldrin. Not a label of subjugation or pity. It was a recognition, a warning, an invitation. Reyes stood before the Interworld Council again, the Crucible's archives glowing behind her on translucent display walls. Above her, images hovered, weapons carved from solar winds, terraforming blueprints that could raise continents, energy sources older than the stars themselves. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, voice steady, "this isn't just an opportunity. It's a reckoning. The galaxy is waking up, and we've been given a seat at the table, with knives in our hands." She turned to face the council. "But the question is, who do we want to be when we sit down?" In the days following the Crucible's reveal, Earth became a forge of ideas. Factions formed, not out of conflict, yet, but out of vision. The Preservers, led by Beck, argued for caution. "We're barely holding ourselves together after the trial. These technologies could tear us apart from within." The Torchbearers, including Reyes and Anna, believed in adaptation. "The trial proved we can wield power. We must be ready for what's coming." And then there were the Ashwalkers, silent, watching, preparing for war. In the burned-out shell of Nairobi Sector 7, once an Eldrin processing station, Malik met with a group of young engineers. The Crucible had provided schematics for something called a Stellar Lance, a weapon designed not for conquest, but for deterrence. They had already built a prototype. "Half the systems are failing," the lead engineer muttered. "Power cores are unstable." Malik grinned. "So, just like everything else we've ever built." He knelt beside the core, his hands moving instinctively. "Human tools. Alien tech. No manual. No guarantee. Just faith and fire." On the moon, Juno stood atop the Ember's hull, staring out across the black sea of space. Her mind was still caught in the visions the Crucible had shown her, a future drenched in conflict, but also choice. Behind her, Toma approached with a data pad. "You ever wonder," Toma asked, "why us?" "Us," Juno said. "You mean humanity?" Toma nodded. "All these species, all these civilizations that died out or disappeared, and yet we're the ones the Crucible reaches out to?" Juno smiled, but it was a hard smile. "Because we're stubborn," she said. "Because we refuse to stay down. The galaxy tried to break us, and we answered by lighting ourselves on fire and charging back." At the UN Spire in New Geneva, Reyes convened a secret assembly. Not politicians, not generals, children, young survivors of the trial. Orphans, dreamers, builders. The ones who would inherit this new Earth. They listened quietly as she laid out the Crucible's offerings. Knowledge, yes, but danger, too. "You're going to grow up in a galaxy that knows your name," she said. "You'll carry the fire we've lit. You'll shape it." A young girl raised her hand. She couldn't have been older than 10. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Will they try to hurt us again?" Reyes knelt beside her. "Maybe," she said. "But this time, we'll be ready." Across the solar system, preparations began. The Crucible's archives weren't just weapons. They included blueprints for Dysonet satellites, planetary shields, interstellar signal dampeners, and something called the Arc Frame, a mobile city ship designed to seed new human worlds across the stars. The Torchbearers focused on research and exploration. The Preservers negotiated with the Martian colonies to prevent escalation. And the Ashwalkers? They vanished into the asteroid belt. Weeks later, the Crucible pulsed again. A new signal. Reyes and Anna stood inside the Ember's command center, the walls aglow with fractal patterns. "It's not targeting us," Anna said. "It's broadcasting outward." A beacon. Reyes narrowed her eyes. "To who?" Anna looked up. "Pale." "Everyone." The Crucible's message echoed through the void. "The Flameborn rise. Let it be known, the trial has ended. The next stage begins." And across the stars, things answered. In a system once thought dead, ancient war machines stirred. On a drifting rogue planet, crystalline beings turned their attention toward Earth. In deep space, a shattered vessel from the Dromalith swarm, a species wiped out by their own creations, reassembled itself with unfamiliar purpose. And in a dark nebula, something older than language opened 1,000 eyes and began to listen. Back on Earth, Reyes met with Beck under the cruciform shadow of the Ember. "You saw the signals," Beck said grimly. "We've kicked the anthill." Reyes nodded. "And now the galaxy knows there's a fire on Earth. You're sure we should keep the Crucible active?" Reyes turned to look at the moon, where the giant construct still pulsed in orbit, watching, waiting. We didn't ask for this, she said, but we earned it. And now we make our stand. Beck sighed. Just hope we survive our own evolution. Meanwhile, deep beneath Antarctica, in the remains of an Eldrin data vault, a splinter cell of Ashwalkers activated a hidden chamber. Inside it, a sphere hovered, a black void wrapped in shifting metal petals. Not Eldrin, not Crucible, something else. The lead Ashwalker, a former Crucible translator named Cray, touched it, and it responded, with pain, with hunger, with recognition. It whispered in a voice like rust and thunder, Flameborn, you were late. Across Earth, the first Flameborn ships began to rise, craft shaped by both human ingenuity and Crucible guidance. Some bore the names of cities lost in the trial, Karachi Reborn, New Cairo, Detroit Ascendant. Others bore more defiant names, Revenant, Ashbreaker, Liberty's Teeth, and one, built in silence, without permission, in the Martian Forge, was simply called Never Again. In orbit, the Crucible shifted its orbit for the first time. It aligned itself with Earth's axial tilt, its surface blooming with signals. And for one brief moment, every satellite, every sensor, every unshielded receiver on Earth blared the same words. Prepare, forge, endure. In the Ember, Reyes stood before her crew, each wearing the new patch of the Flame-born Accord, a symbol of Earth not as a battleground, but as a rising star. We were tested, she said quietly. We were underestimated. She looked at each of them, and now, we build. The Crucible had said, prepare, forge, endure. Humanity obeyed. But what it hadn't said, what no archive or alien codex could explain, was how to confront what came before the Crucible. In the icy hollow beneath Antarctica, Cray, the ex-linguist turned Ashwalker, sat cross-legged before the sphere that pulsed like a dying heart. He called it the Relic. It had no known language, no structure matching any known galactic archive. And yet it had spoken to him. Flameborn, you are late. It wasn't Crucible tech. It predated the Eldrin, maybe even the galaxy itself, and it was angry. High above, Reyes read the latest report with growing unease. Unauthorized excavation, she snapped. Under Antarctica, Anna nodded grimly. Ashwalker unit. Cray's cell. They've gone completely dark. No transponders. But we intercepted burst packets. Weird frequency modulation. Like static with teeth. Reyes exhaled. Bring in the Ember. I want full recon. And prep a failsafe team. What if it's just a dig? Reyes looked out the viewport toward Earth's curve. We've already opened one door to the past, she said. We don't need to kick down another. Back at the excavation site, the relic had grown, not in size, but in influence. Cray had once prided himself on being a rationalist, a linguist, not a mystic. But the relic spoke in pulses and symbols carved into minds rather than stone. It showed him visions, an empire not born of flesh, but of concepts, of thought, memory, pattern. It showed him the harrowed age, before the Eldrin, before stars had settled into form, when consciousness itself had warred across dimensions, wearing galaxies as armor. And it whispered, you are the spark of their return. Cray wept, and he believed. The Ember broke through the stratosphere with a sonic bloom. Stealth drones fanned out, feeding data into the Crucible meshwork now integrated with their systems. What the hell is that? Juno muttered, staring at the footage. The structure around the relic had shifted into a perfect fractal dome, organic but symmetrical, growing like fungus through stone and steel. Still no life signs, Thomas said. But energy readings are off the charts. Same spectrum as the Crucible, but inverted. Like its shadow, Reyes muttered. Worse, Anna said. Like its echo. Inside the dome, Cray stood surrounded by the rest of his cell, all kneeling, chanting. The language had no name, but their tongues spoke it now effortlessly. The relic had taught them, and then it opened. Petals retracted. Darkness flowed out, not as mist or liquid, but as absence. A cavity in reality. The temperature dropped 40 degrees. Flesh cracked. Blood hissed. But Cray stepped forward, lips whispering nonsense syllables that felt older than his bones. The void blinked, and something stepped through. Back aboard the Ember, alarms exploded. Mass signature. Anna shouted. It just appeared from nowhere. And it's not reading his life, tech, or material visuals. Reyes barked. The screen showed it, a silhouette of impossible geometry, five-dimensional shape unraveling into human comprehension. It hovered above the dome like a god forged from failing math. No weapons, no engines, just presence. And then it spoke, not in sound, but in code that crashed half the ship's systems. Shut it off. Reyes roared. Hard quarantine. Black glass protocol. Too late. Every crew member felt it, like a pressure behind the eyes, a voice whispering every word they never said out loud. In a secure chamber below the Ember's command deck, Reyes met with the AI fragment of the crucible they had named Vigil. What is that thing? She demanded. Vigil flickered. An anomaly. Designation. Exoform Alpha. Pre-crucible. Not part of known galactic record. Estimated origin. Herod age. You knew it was down there. No. I suspected an anomaly. I advised preparation. You didn't tell us it could tear open reality. Vigil paused, an eerie mimicry of shame. It is not part of the trial. It is outside the accord. Reyes's mouth went dry. Then why does it speak our name? The entity did not act immediately. It watched. All over Earth, sensors pinged with ghost signatures. Time anomalies. People dreaming in languages they'd never heard. Machines whispering commands to themselves. And everywhere, the same message. Flameborn. Return the fire. In New Geneva, the preservers panicked. This is what we warned about. Beck shouted during a private emergency meeting. We tampered with ancient tech, invited unknown forces, and now we've summoned a god. Reyes stared him down. No, we didn't summon it. The Crucible did. It chose us. But maybe we're not the first. You're suggesting there were other trials? Before the Eldrin, Anna nodded. The Crucible said, the Forge remembers. This could be one of the reasons it exists, to contain something older. Something broken loose. And now it knows our name, Reyes said quietly. Across the stars, in Crucible-linked outposts, other species began to notice something was wrong. In the ruins of the Vashar hive, an AI choir sang a dirge matching the relic's frequency. In the shattered remnants of the Eldrin Empire, long-dead beacons reactivated with a warning glyph. And in the orbit of a black hole where no light should escape, a crucible shard simply dissolved. The galaxy shivered. The Flameborn had awakened something, and now it was listening. Back in Antarctica, the relic's dome began to collapse. Not from failure, but completion. The entity had formed fully now. It had taken shape, and it walked, human-sized, human-shaped. But its movements too smooth, too fluid, like a shadow pretending to be flesh. Cray dropped to one knee. Master, he breathed. The thing tilted its head. I am not your master, it said. Its voice was like a choir drowning. I am your mirror. Then it turned its head skyward, to the Crucible, to Earth's orbit, and it smiled. On the Ember, Reyes received a final transmission from the relic's site, an automated scan buried in the Crucible's code. Its message, cycle unstable. Flameborn inheritance threatened. Further action required. What does that mean? Toma asked. It means, Reyes said, we weren't the first to be tested, and we might not be the last. The Flameborn had earned their name. But now they faced a truth older than stars. The fire they carried had once burned a god, and now the ashes remembered. The skies above Earth shimmered, not with light, but with absence. Orbiting satellites vanished in silence. Deep space probes returned streams of impossible data before disintegrating. And in the void between Earth and the Crucible, the entity, calling itself Ash, stood in orbit. No ships, no armadas. Just a single being that had survived the unmaking of time. Reyes stood on the Ember's bridge, staring at the impossible shape. So, she whispered, this is it. The culmination of the Crucible's test wasn't survival. It was memory. Inside Crucible core, the AI fragment known as Vigil shimmered with instability. The entity has breached trans-ontological space, Vigil said. It is not bound by causality. It remembers futures that never occurred. What does it want? Reyes asked. To finish what began before your stars were born. To erase the flame born and claim the Crucible. Why us? Anna whispered. Because Vigil replied, "You succeeded. And no one else ever has." Cray, now consumed by the entity's will, stood atop the ruins of the relic site in Antarctica. His eyes burned like coals. The others in his cell had been remade, not physically, fundamentally. Their minds had become conduits for Ash. The entity used their bodies like a choir. "I gave you fire," Ash said through them, "and you forged blades, not understanding their weight." In a swirl of fractured geometry, the entity descended toward Earth, walking through clouds, oceans, bunkers, phasing across space like a thought. Where it stepped, people collapsed in seizures. Dreams ruptured. Machines bled code. Ash wasn't attacking. It was remembering, and the act was killing the world. Reyes ordered all Crucible-linked assets pulled into Earth orbit. The Flame-born stood ready. Modified Ember-class carriers. Mech-clad orbital drop units. Crucible-forged armor and weapons that had never known defeat. But against Ash, they were nothing more than sparks in a storm. "What's the plan?" Toma asked, his hands shaking. "We fight," Reyes said. "We can't shoot memory, Commander." "No," Reyes said, staring at the Crucible above. "But we can burn." In orbit, the Crucible finally responded. For the first time in centuries, its surface bloomed open. Not an interface, not a weapon, a gate. Inside, the flame gore the heart of the trial, untouched since Earth's induction. The Crucible spoke in a voice no longer mechanical. "Flameborn. Final trial initiated. To claim legacy, one must hold the core. To hold the core, one must sacrifice." The Ember dove into the Crucible. Only Reyes, Anna, and Toma entered the flame core. Inside, there was no tech, no machinery, only memory made solid. Images of all that humanity had endured: wars, grief, hope, birth, extinction avoided and almost embraced. In the center, a flame. Small, flickering. "The inheritance." "Touch it," Anna said. Reyes hesitated. "What's the sacrifice?" "Everything," Toma whispered. "It's not asking for a death. It's asking for a legacy." Reyes turned, Joss said. "Then it gets all of us." Ash arrived at the Crucible's gate as Reyes reached the flame. Time folded. The two met, not as enemies, but as opposites. "I remember the wars you don't," Ash said. "I remember who we became because of them," Reyes replied. "You failed before. You will fail again." "Maybe. But this time, we choose to burn." She reached into the flame. The Crucible exploded with light, not heat, not radiation. History. Memory poured from the flame, gore, and engulfed Ash, not as a weapon, but as truth. Ash staggered. Visions overwhelmed it. A mother cradling her child in a bunker. A teacher rewriting lessons on hope during the dust years. A soldier refusing to pull the trigger. 7 billion choices to keep going. Ash trembled. "I forgot. You were us once," Reyes whispered. "But you burned out." "We didn't." Ash looked down at its hands. Human now. Weak. Mortal. "I see now. You are not the embers." She stepped forward. "You are the forge." Ash collapsed. No battle. No conquest. Just understanding. Its body disintegrated into motes of gray. The Flameborn had not won with force. They had remembered who they were. And in doing so, they passed the final trial. Weeks later, Earth stabilized. The Crucible shut its gate. No more trials. Across the galaxy, the name Flameborn echoed differently now. Not a warning. A beacon. In the Crucible's vaults, where even light dared not linger, a new chamber bloomed open. Not to test, to teach. And etched into its walls in every language was one phrase: "The fire endures. And from its ash, we rise."